Hi again. I made a slight alteration in his eyes, and it's really too small, so I did a little drawing to try and explain this just because I think you might find it useful at times. I don't know. I think I've got the iris of the eye about right down here. But here's the thing. I was noticing before he was looking a little like the deer in the headlights. And part of what we know about the eye is how open it is by how much pupil is showing or iris is showing. So if this is a football eye, okay, if the iris is like this, then we know that the lid is down quite a bit. This isn't the full eye. Problem is that I had drawn the eye I had brought the edges of the, rounded it out and brought the edges of the pupil in too far. See, right up here? And he still has that bug-eyed look. See, I kind of have it here too. So all that's about was, it was so tiny that I couldn't show you on the painting anyway. But just connecting this much of the iris with that top lid makes then his eyes more relaxed. He's no longer frightened or surprised. So another thing that contributes to that is that there's always a little bit of shadow here. It could be shadow because of the light, but it could also be just a fluttering of the lashes there that gives you a little darker area. And when that happens, the darker part of the eye kind of runs into it, and if anything, it kind of merges out here softly. And so it can read even more that way than the actual edges of the actual iris. I hope that made sense. Darn it. Okay, so that's the lesson on the guy's eye. Just one of those little things to think about. Oh, another thing that people do. Oh, now I don't have a pencil. Another thing that people that are new to this have a tendency to do, let's just say we have an eye shape here. I don't know, it's not very convincing. But let's say that someone's eyes are kind of partway closed like that. There is a tendency among people to, instead of making the eye, like I showed you there, to make an oval in here. So it's like the iris got squished down this way. Just beware that there's a tendency to do that, and to watch out and don't make that mistake on anything, ever in the future. Okay. Now, color. Let's look at, I've got some skin color here. Well, it's close. And I have got some cerulean right here. The thing is, now we're going to mute this with the cerulean, and it'll be much better color than if we just mixed a color, which would have been a lot duller. Because watercolor is actually, they talk about bright, beautiful colors and stuff. Watercolor, though, is much duller than acrylic or oil because it's matte. I guess that's the big reason. So you can see that I have got this mixed very, very thin. Let's just try it out on here. It takes very little color to mute that down quite a lot. And I learned this because I was in printing and working with 4-color negatives and had seen what really goes on with those. And the fact is that the shape is really carried in the skin, red, in a white person's skin, is really carried by the reds. So you can see that's muted a lot. You could get too much and go really blue, although that might look good. Now remember, when it's dry, it's going to read a little differently. So these darker areas you might use, again, darker blue. But it doesn't just mute it. It begins to pull it back, make it recede, make it feel darker. I guess it actually is darker. But suppose you want to mute this and you don't want it to go darker, and maybe you don't want it to go quite so dull. Here's the white ink. And I'm going to mix some white ink into this. And the thing is, it should look really, really pale. And the reason is, when you mix whites into color, you can sometimes, and you glaze it, you can go dull. Or in a situation like this, you can. In fact, a lot of the time, acrylics dry darker instead of lighter. So let's take this. That looks so light, it looks like it's nothing. And again, it's thinned down a lot because we're glazing. We are not covering this color up. We're just adding something to it. So this can look, because right now it's bright and the white looks really strong. But as it dries, the white is going to be, is going to go away. So there's a little bit of a judgment thing here that takes a little while to learn. Well, we could sit here and look at this all day while it dries, or I could go dry it. So if anything, that was a little bit strong. When you're working with the white ink, so I'm just going to weaken it just a little bit. When you're working with the white ink, it's much easier to handle the paint because it really won't flow very much. It really slows it down. There, now there's some nice subtle skin. Okay, so let's go to work on him. And let's see, what do I want to do to him? Well, I still keep some fairly strong reds in these usually, because red is bright and pretty in watercolor, and so I think they need that little extra lift. So now I have some stronger blue and some whiter blue. See, and here I've got some thinned out blue with no white in it. Let's try. This area is a cool area. So let's try a little. Really didn't want much on the lip. Well, we definitely want this area to go duller. It's the neck and it's in shadow anyway. Whoops. See how that calms it down? Now up here at the top, we've got areas that, if anything, they could be darker. Well, this is going to put a lot of shadow into it. And this is going to help merge those eyebrows in there. Let's soften some edges. Wow, look at that. I never did get, I think I want to get his eyebrows a little darker eventually. Here's a dark area over here. Let's soften some edges. But I don't want to cover the whole cheek. I want to keep some of that cheek looking a little redder. And here on the ears, I want just a little bit of color to put it in shadow a little more. But the ears should be a little bit redder. And I'm inclined to exaggerate. So if the ears are redder, I might make the ears even redder. He's got actually an area there that's a little bit redder, right? Can you see that right there? Well, to get that redder, there's a little bit of red paint. No, I don't want it there. In fact, right there, let's go a little bit lighter. This really won't lighten it a lot, but maybe it will a little bit. Just depends how strong it is. Okay. And here, definitely want that darker and cooler. Okay, so that looks a little loud right here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let that dry, and then I'm going to see if it's too loud. I'll add a tiny bit of blue to it. But it might not even be too loud. So on this side, again, the ear is quite a bit darker than the side of the head on this side. So I think I better add a little more red first. So I prefer to get my shaping mostly done with mostly reds. And then I come back and I try not to go back and forth blue, red like that too much, because it will just sort of start to mush together and go dull. Whoa. Well, that is certainly red, isn't it? Yeah. You know, that looks extreme. I think that's going to work. And I think I want a little bit of red right there. This is pretty much pure rose. I just picked it up out of the well, and it wasn't that it necessarily needed to be rose. It's just what I happened to pick up, which happens a lot with me. Let's see. Just having fun adding these reds in. Oh, and we haven't worked on the mustache. So I'm going to add more blues in a few minutes. But while that is starting to dry, I'm going to go ahead and work on this mustache. So I've got some of the same gray that we used before. And let's see. So this mustache, I don't know much about mustaches. It seems grayer on the top, and I don't know if the hair down here is really darker. I think it is. I don't think it's just about shadow, but it could be both. But I think I will. Okay, and we'll just soften an edge or two, but let's not soften all of them entirely. Whoops. I got a drop of water off the ferrule that was just hanging on there. And I'm softening some edges like that. I like to do that. That's looking better already. Another thing about blue, one of the ways to make the eyeballs look white is to add some blue. Now, this eyeballs are still maybe just a little bit light. Tell you what I'm going to do. Before I add any blue to them, I'm just going to add a little bit more of our peach color. I thought I had them dark enough, but now I don't think I did. There. Okay. So we've done this. We've darkened some areas there. I tell you what. Oh, let's go down here to the hands. I think I'd like a little more red in the hands. I want a little more drama than what we're seeing here. And I like this this area that it didn't really make a cast shadow much. It's a soft edged shadow that sort of, it's a cast shadow, but it's really soft. But I want to make it a little bit more of a cast shadow that has a little drama to it. And maybe we'll add just a little bit more color down here, because fingers are not supposed to go blue. Whoops. Well, you know what? That knuckle doesn't come down that far. I mean, it comes down almost to the edge. It doesn't come up the way I just did that. Let's see what that does. It's looking like, oh my gosh, he looks like a lobster person, doesn't he? Well, you know, this works. You'll see. There, I like that. Okay. I'm going to dry it. Okay. See how much this is pretty decent skin tone. You know, I think I'm going to leave that little bit of red there. But we need an edge right here. So let's try to do that with blue. And this is blue that doesn't have the white ink in it. At least I don't think there's any white ink in it. And I'm just going to come along here. I probably could have stood to put a little bit more red in there too. Let's get a little more here. Oh, did I cover up my red spot? There. Okay, that's about right. He needs a little more definition right here with the gray. See, now he has an earlobe. Okay. So let's keep playing with our blue. I think, by the way, I think at the end of this, that we need to pull a little bit of reds and yellows into the gray in some areas because this gray is the same darn gray overall. And I don't know if that'll even show up. Let's see, maybe we'll put a little over here too. Reflected light. Maybe a little. See what that does. When you just glaze a little bit on real thin, sometimes you might want to do it several times to get it strong enough. On the other hand, if you're glazing and glazing and glazing, sometimes you can undo some of your work. Yeah, see, it's nice to have some blue contrasting with the reds in his face, but you can have too much of that. So a thing that takes some of the redness out so it doesn't stand out so much is to also pull some red into some other areas. So don't forget that that's also something you can work with. So let's get this blue, and I'm going to... So I'm just painting the whole ear blue. You know what? I think that's going to work. I thought I'd pull up a little bit right there at the edge. That's one of those things you probably need to watch it while it's doing its thing. A little more cerulean up here. Now, one of the reasons that some of this works too is the cerulean is a blue that's got a lot of yellow in it. So I'm not really using much of any yellow here. And it's not that I don't. I like to paint them. I like to start out with a yellow wash and a red wash and build up. But on something this little and for a demo like this, I didn't think it was necessary. It just might make the whole thing kind of tedious for you. So, okay, let's get this little area right there. Okay, so I could put more cools in. Woo. And this is just a matter of personal preference, how far you want to go with this. I think I want to leave his nose kind of red. We'll pretend he's a drinker. Be careful about getting too much blue on cheeks and noses. I've seen people just look like they died because of that. Remember, this is much brighter going down than it is when it dries. So again, if you want, this actually, the whites here are really working for me the way that they are. But if they weren't, because I do tone them with a lot of skin tones, then I would just add a little blue. As long as they are cooler, as long as the eyeball looks bluer than the skin, it will look like it's white. And this one already does, so I'm really not going to mess with it. Now, we could put, if this was a bigger painting, I would lift a spot of white or something, but we could put, okay, that's too big. Oh, darn, it's so damn small. Well, that's not really so much of a highlight, but maybe his eye's bluer. So, okay, let's come down here and let's put a little in down here. Now, once you mix the blue in with the white, it really doesn't matter much whether you use a blue like ultramarine or whether you use the cerulean. I kind of stay away from phthalo just because you can have accidents with phthalo. I like that a little redder than that. Let's pull some of that up. Okay, that's about right. And you know how much red I put down there, and how bright it looked. But now that it's dry, I like it just like it is. I'm not going to add any blue to that. But I might. Ooh, maybe. I might add. Let's add a little on the fingers, mostly because I just want to demonstrate the blue. I don't feel a lot of need to have it there. It's good to have some variation, though. His fingers really have a lot of yellow there. And you could do that. How would we do that? Well, you know, my first preference, now that it's really too late here, but we'll do a little over here. My first preference would be to take the Cad Yellow Light. It's either a Cad Yellow Light or Cad Yellow Pale. I don't know. Okay, let's just use some Cad. It's got some white in it. It may not have enough white. This is probably the only way that I would use Cad Yellow Pale on skin, and I have done it many times, but is to maybe put that yellow on top. That's not working for me. I think it needs a little more white in it. And by the way, the reason I use the white ink, this is the Dr. Martens. It's made with zinc, and it's brighter than titanium gouache, or I think it is. See, I could add that. I would want to keep it pretty weak. Oh, let's just put a little blue on the back of his hand. We'll just have yellow and blue, and why not? I think this has a tiny bit of white in it, sort of in between here. You can have fun with that. Yeah, I kind of like that better than this. I wonder. Now, I may be getting a green here. Yeah, it's kind of nice. Where's a place where we could put a little yellow on him, on his face? About right there. I wasn't going to put this in this lesson. In fact, I don't know when's the last time I've used the yellow like this. Sometimes I'll use a transparent yellow and glaze to change colors in general a little bit, but this is more of a on-top glaze. Well, do it everywhere else. You got to do a little on the nose. I don't even know if this shows up on camera. It's pretty. I'm doing a pretty subtle job of it. Nevertheless, it gives a painting just a little more richness. You don't want to put it over everywhere, because when you do, then you've got, well, then it goes back to boring. You want You want these selectively moved around a little bit because it makes that little flow of changes in color. Oh, this will probably look awful, but you know, now I'm just in the mood. Now remember, it's going to dry a whole lot weaker than that. That's probably going to look pretty good there. Well, I didn't know that was going to work. Must be a sunny day. Okay. Whoops, I've got water running down here. He could use, darn, every time I think I'm done, he could use a tiniest bit of white highlight on the mustache. But here's the thing, you don't want this to be too strong. His mustache is gray, it is not white. But I know that if I put this on kind of weakly, that it's going to dry gray. That's probably enough of that. I think, again, it needs to be, I'm going to dry this and then I'm going to put it up so you have a better look at it for the ending. Okay, there he is in all his glory. Actually doesn't look too bad. He needs a background. That's your job. You have to make up a background. Okay, that's it, guys. Bye.